Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Interrupted. This podcast deals with grief and death, so please be aware that there are some things that may be said that might be emotionally triggering for you. Please note that I am in no way a medical professional, so if you are struggling with grief or have lost a loved one, please seek medical attention, talk to a therapist, get into some grieving groups. All right, let's get started. So, today we are talking about how grieving people get judged. Grieving people are already hurting. The last thing they need is our judgment. In this episode, we're going to look at the ways in which those on the outside looking in tend to judge those on the inside of their grief. Number one, they should be over it by now. This is probably the most common opinion people make against the grieving. For some reason, we have been told that grief follows a pattern, a timeline, a clear path. But grief is messy and almost has a life of its own. The 5 steps laid out by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, were identified for those who are facing death and their loved ones when finding out that the person is facing a terminal diagnosis. They were never meant to be part of the grieving process. There do tend to be milestones in each person's processing of their grief, but for some, it may go straight forward, processing enough to find some sense of normalcy again. For others, it can look like a ball of old 8mm film that has been unwound and laid on the floor. You cannot find the beginning or the end. Each time trying to sort out your feelings, you see or hear something that reminds you of what you have lost. And you start the grieving process all over again. And whoever said there was an end to the grieving process, I know people who 20 years later still have times when their pain is triggered and they find themselves back on day one after losing someone they loved. We don't get over people we love deeply. We learn how to carry both love and loss at the same time. They were part of our lives. They were integral to our development, and we want to honor them by carrying them with us into our future. Number 2, they are grieving wrong. This is like telling someone they are living wrong. Who are we to judge how a person's grief or struggle with their pain should look? They may be grieving wrong by your standards of grief that you have imposed on yourself. Each person's grief is as unique as our fingerprint. Would you look at someone's fingerprint and tell them that their fingerprint is wrong just because it doesn't look like yours or look like what a normal fingerprint should look like? Thinking that someone is grieving wrong is an absolute absurd way of thinking. We look at someone and think that they are crying too much or not crying enough. They went back to work too early or not getting rid of their loved one's personal possessions to get on with their life. Everyone is different. Everyone's brain and heart are different. Judging someone for how they process pain lacks compassion and understanding. Number 3, they need to move on. This is a criticism we have when we think the person has been grieving for too long. No one is comfortable around a grieving person. No one loves to grieve. And no one loves to cry and show their pain to everyone. When someone starts to cry because of their pain, they feel just as uncomfortable as those around them. But for us to think these people should move on because it makes us feel bad is selfish and prideful. Grief is a journey. Sometimes we are walking forward, and sometimes we need to take a seat and cry for a while. The grieving person is not grieving to purposely make you feel awkward. They are just feeling their feelings, and that's okay. Number 4, they found someone else too fast. I have been guilty of this one. When someone loses a spouse that they have been married to for a long time, it gets lonely really quick. One second they are there, and the next they are gone. The surviving spouse is left with an empty house. No one to talk to, no one to have dinner with, no one to go to movies with, no one to hug and kiss, and no one to have a sexual relationship with. Marriage vows say, "Till death do we part," or similar words. When a spouse dies, the marriage covenant has been fulfilled. That does not erase grief or love. It simply means the surviving spouse is no longer bound by those vows. Does that mean they never loved their spouse? Of course not. Or that they are over it already? No, not at all. Some people need that personal connection. I have been on both ends of that judgment, and it doesn't feel good on either side. Before you judge someone for getting too involved too quickly, remember that they kept their promise. How can we judge someone for keeping their promise? We often judge grieving people for trying to survive in the only ways they know how. Grief doesn't erase the human need for connection. Number 5, they need to let go. Letting go shows up in different ways, but we tend to judge people who cannot let go of objects or the person's personal possessions that belong to the deceased. I know that after my husband died, that the one thing I wanted to hold on to was the one thing that drove me the most crazy when he was alive. Objects are emotional anchors. They are evidence that someone lived, that they were there, that they existed. We want to hang on to those things because we know we will never see them again. We know that they are gone, and we want to hold on to them in whatever fashion we can. I know a guy who held on to his mother's dentures. Getting rid of a loved one's stuff can feel terrifying. Due to personal circumstances, I had to get rid of my late husband's clothing within a month after he died. It was surreal when I drove up to the donation place and handed them his clothing. Clothing is something everyone needs. My brain knew he was never going to need them again, but my heart felt like I was throwing him out of the house. This judgment can go both ways. We can judge the person for getting rid of the deceased person's things too quickly, and we can judge them for holding on to them for too long. It goes to show that grieving people cannot win in the eyes of others. There's often an unspoken hierarchy society creates around death. Some losses receive sympathy, others receive suspicion, blame, discomfort, and even silence. Number 6, there are judgments around how someone has died. Deaths like suicide, overdoses, alcoholism, estrangement, mental illness, homicide, and even complicated family relationships can cause us to judge the family, the person's life, and even the surviving person's life. This kind of judgment can isolate a grieving person even more. Not all grief receives equal compassion from the world. Some losses come wrapped in judgment before the funeral even begins. Finally, however you are surviving this, may you do so judgment-free. Please reach out if you have any questions, and please reach out to a medical professional or a therapist or grief groups to talk through and process your grief. We all need it. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.